So what is the future of Web3 and staking? Well, we have assembled a superhero team of panelists to explore it in our next session. As the blockchain industry continues to mature, well then, of course, I think we know that the role of institutions will naturally need to evolve alongside that. We're going to explore everything from on-ramping and governance to venture and regulation. This really is our opportunity to unpick Web3 and staking in 2023 and beyond. And as I said, we've got superhero panelists led by Jide Fashola from Cardano Foundation, Philip Schmidt from Coinbase Cloud, Yves Holenstein with Bitcoin Suisse AG, Danish Chaudhry with FMFW.io Exchange, and Emma Lee with Bitrue. This truly will be a panel like no other. I'm excited to hear from them. I know you are too. Let's hear it for our rockstar panelists.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Wow, it's amazing to be here. Thank you to everyone for coming down, and yeah. So my name is Jide Fashola. I'm the head of technical integrations at Cardano Foundation. My team basically looks after the integration of exchanges and third party into the Cardano ecosystem. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Yep. Hello, my name is Philip Schmidt, based out of Austin, Texas. I'm part of Coinbase Cloud. So what we do is provide Web3 services to developers, businesses, everyone in the crypto industry. And my background came from the cloud business, in particular Oracle Cloud and IBM Cloud. And then back in 2019, started going to the crypto industry, working with, starting up on the ITN, starting up a stake pool, and then Coinbase came in and they're like, well, with your cloud experience and experience in the ITN for Cardano, come on in and help us out. And ever since then, I've been managing Cardano stake pools for Coinbase Cloud and other protocols like BNB and Celo and so forth.
All right, my name is Yves Holenstein. Hello to meet you. I work with Bitcoin Suisse, based in Switzerland. We are one of the first companies in the Swiss crypto valley. We're a broker, a custodian, a staking provider, and I am responsible for the staking offering at Bitcoin Suisse. I ventured into the crypto industry in 2019 with blockchain-based track and trace solutions, and then joined Bitcoin Suisse at the beginning of the year. And before, I was 20 years in the financial services industry.
Great. Pleasure to be here. My name is Danish Chaudhry. I'm CEO of FMFW.io, which stands for Free the Money, Free the World. I started the exchange about 3.5, 4 years ago as part of the Bitcoin.com family. Since then, we've grown exponentially. We've got a few million users. We do about $2.5 to $3 billion of volume a day. I've been in the crypto industry since 2010. When you would buy Bitcoin off of eBay, which is a weird process. My background's in traditional finance. I used to be a portfolio manager at BlackRock, which is a large asset manager. And before that, I used to do M&A with Ernst & Young and a couple other companies. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. It's very honored to be here, and it's a special day for me as well. It's my birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you. A very lucky day. I am CMO of Bitrue, and it's a very low-profile crypto exchange. And every time these days, people ask me, "Oh, how to spell it?" Yeah, because but actually we have been a long-term supporter for Cardano ecosystem, and as early as the beginning of 2019, we already listed ADA on our platform. And just 2020, the February, and we just have ADA as our base currency. And only in 2 months, it's tripled, very short term. So we have a lot of collaboration with Cardano, ecosystem, and in the future we will, keep doing and a lot of innovative projects together. Thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. So thank you very much for introducing yourselves. I guess we'll just delve into the topic of native assets. So at the moment, there are a bunch of native assets on the Cardano ecosystem, and there's a pending question that a lot of people, I suppose, don't have the information of or where to get it from, because there's no uniform or standardized way of native assets to get listed on exchanges. So I was wondering if you could walk us through your processes for listing native assets.
I guess I'll take this one, and then you can come.
You go first, yeah.
Yeah, so we already work with fairly closely with the Cardano Foundation. We've got a couple of Cardano native assets listed, such as Meld. We also list Occam, which is a launchpad for Cardano projects. So we work fairly closely with them, and we've got a few others that are in the pipeline. Because we work so closely, we get a fairly good amount of projects approaching us, such as Ardana as well, wanting to list. Our process is fairly stringent in the sense that we really do our due diligence very thoroughly. So there's various steps to the process. Outside of the tech due diligence, we need to make sure, obviously, the assets are safe, contracts, all this sort of stuff. On the regulatory side, we definitely need a legal opinion. We work with certain prominent firms, which we forward the projects onto, to make sure the legal opinion is fairly airtight, which reviews the white paper and any other documentation. We then do a social audit, website, social media, Twitter, Telegram, make sure it's got a vibrant community. And then, especially again from the regulatory side, we do KYC and AML checks and PEP and sanction checks on all the founders and directors. Because not only do we have to be secure ourselves, we want to make sure that our customers are fairly safe and they're not really trading assets that are basically scams sort of thing. So we kind of have that process stringent, be it Cardano assets, be it Ethereum assets, be it whichever sort of thing. And that's kind of like how we go through it. It's like a 2-month long process, just making sure that everything's okay for our customers.
Okay, perfect. And do you charge customers for getting listed on your platform?
There is generally a listing fee, because there is a lot of, along with all the processes that I mentioned, there's a lot of costs that we kind of bear. So integration takes time, doing the KYC, AML. So there's a lot of man hours spent on doing the integration and launching a token. Hence, there is a cost that varies depending upon complexity of which chain we're launching. So for example, more like Polkadot projects are a little bit more complex to integrate for the most part. It's just how Substrate works. Simpler projects like Ethereum, where you can list it within 2 days sort of thing. So the cost varies depending upon the effort that we put in.
Perfect. Thank you very much for sharing, Danish. Emma, do you want to walk us through the Bitrue process?
Yes, I think different exchanges has different criteria for listing. But for Bitrue, we are a very conservative exchange, and the conservative is kind of our business model. And because we mostly, focus on like some growth early stage projects, and especially those projects maybe not like a bigger exchange has no interest yet. So we really have great interest in these kind of projects. First of all, I think it's make it more specific about the listing. I think I can just share with you some like some major areas that for Bitrue. First of all, we focus on like these kind of growth early stage projects, and which we will focus on their their network effects, magnitude of their network effect, and also the certification of the project, products itself. And at the same time, we will see like just mentioned like the KYC of the credibility of the team, and also like track the record as well. At the same time, we also like look at the competitive advantages, and we hope like the project has like a potential, and that in the future it could be very successful in this field, and then we focus on these kind of projects. But of course, as long as the project has have committed to their goals and for a good cause and very honest, we are every project very calm for us. Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing, Emma. And do you also charge customers for getting listed on Bitrue?
Yes, it depends. Some like we really want to support and we look at it's really good, we will give discount or some no fees.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
Perfect. Sounds good. Okay. So on the notion of, I suppose, identities. Today we have a lot of problems with, I suppose, the control of identities that we have as a people. So the introduction of SSIs and DIDs, I suppose, is meant to circumvent that process and give the community, give people back their rights. Right? What are your thoughts on it? And do you believe that this can be used for a KYC process for exchanges in the future?
I can start off. So from an engineering perspective, one interesting component is if DIDs have that component where, for exchanges, we have that allow list, deny list mechanism, where if you want to withdraw your funds, you have to input your address. And I mean, internally, we kind of have this joke of the sweaty hand kind of syndrome, where, the bigger the funds you have, probably the more nervous you are, and whatnot. So if we can simplify that process and use a component of DIDs to make it anybody comfortable to, integrate and withdraw funds to a secure manner, I think from a security perspective, that's what I'm mostly interested in.
Maybe to add on, if we look at more the authentication topic of the actual user itself, I believe the DID projects I've seen so far, they could be a good replacement for private logins like a Facebook login, a Google login, etc. at the moment. But in order to actually being used for KYC, you need to have them at a level where they're accepted by the regulators. And I believe that was still far away. Because we just saw it recently in Switzerland. We just had a public vote last year on electronic identities. There's a lot of questions. One of the main topics that led to discussions was the fact that identities were privately issued and not government issued, etc. And that's basically what we're talking about here as well. The IDs are not issued by governments. So getting the whole regulatory space to accept such decentrally issued DIDs as an official identification, I think is a lengthy process. And if you look at companies like ours, where we have to perform KYC on our customers, even though we may like DIDs a lot, we're still obliged to follow the regulatory guidelines.
Perfect. Thank you
so
for
I think
sharing.
It's just a lengthy process.
While we're on the topic of, I suppose, KYC and regulations, so the U.S. Congress drafted a bill, so the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act bill, and this bill basically redefines the term broker, right? And a broker now is anyone who effectuates the transfer of digital assets. Do you believe that this bill would, I suppose, change the course of cryptos in the future? And do you think it would also affect stake pool operators and other digital asset providers in a negative way? Or
I'll take a stab at that one. So actually, like right after that bill was introduced, even like it was kind of leaked, there's a great example of like how decentralized our community is. If back in crypto Twitter, it was absolutely fire, and there's a huge uproar on that. And that was a huge push to like educate our senators, government officials worldwide on, educating them properly on how our system works and trying to cooperate to maybe, update the bill. So making sure that the markets can still work as intended and make sure there's proper regulation. But I mean, moving forward, I'm going to have to give huge respect to Brian Armstrong. He tweeted out, it's pretty much saying, you know, due to the lack of regular clarity, we actually see a lot of, you know, businesses, I mean, in particular, he said American, but this is affecting us worldwide, global. A lot of them will move offshore. For example, when we first started out our stake pools, back when Shelley was first starting, long time ago, one of the first kind of like policy-wise things we were worried about is where to run our stake pools. We were concerned if we could even run them in the same jurisdiction where we lived in, and depending on where you were in the world, you probably had to run your node elsewhere or move your operations elsewhere. It's one of those aspects where when we don't have clarity, you're kind of concerned how you can run your business in terms of crypto and moving forward. So as long as we can continue to work with experts, I'm from lawmakers. If lawmakers can continue to work with experts, making sure that the markets can still grow as intended, but provide at least some regulation, clarity, that'd be appreciated. So.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think the bill itself is more of a chokehold on the industry for the most part. Can't expect node operators to get brokerage licenses and so on and so forth. And it's an example of, you know, you just paint everything with one brush and expect everything to work out fine. Whereas, you know, you can't apply TradFi, traditional finance, rules and regulations to an industry that operates, you know, the way we operate, you know, sort of thing. So yeah, there needs to be a little bit more update on the language and everything around the bill so that they're not hindering any innovation or businesses, you know, that currently operate within the US, sort of thing.
Thank you for sharing. So one thing I would like to talk about is in the past, for example, Emma, Bitrue, have you worked with community stake pools, and have you done anything with, I suppose, supporting community stake pools in the Cardano ecosystem?
Oh yeah, it's a good opportunity to report this. Yeah, and I think Bitrue has been working, you know, very hard to support, you know, a Cardano ecosystem, and for example, the skating part, and you know, I think Bitrue was the first exchange and to support the Cardano skating pool. Like we have, we support like 2 million ADA projects to One Love and Shamrock, the two projects, skating pools, and we want to just like support more in the future for the skating, because we believe skating, you know, staking is kind of, you know, one of the best ways to control, you know, the supply of token and eventually contribute to the whole, you know, ecosystem to be better. And so, as well as we provide some like on our platform, we have native token staking pool and the non-native token staking pool, and they both like work very well on our platform. And as well as we have some like special called BMax. It's especially, you know, we designed this for maximize the returns for our loyal stakers, and to help like staking to flourish in the community. Yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing,
Yeah.
Emma. So Danish, are you also looking to, I suppose, support or delegate to community stake pools in the future?
Yeah, in the future we'll definitely support it. We do offer staking on the platform because we run our own infrastructure where our back office has our own nodes and everything set up. So it's for customers on the exchange to kind of lock up some tokens, get the staking yield. And we also do yield farming, which assets that allow yield farming sort of thing. So, you know, some stable coins allow you to yield farm because people are borrowing it and so on and so forth. So we have a combination of staking and yield farming that we operate. And then, yeah, we will look into going into community pools and trying to dedicate some of our resources on that side, just so the network can flourish, sort of thing.
And what would you say the key difference is between yield farming and staking?
So staking is basically kind of ensuring network integrity for the most part. So you have nodes where you can lock up tokens so that the network is more secure. So it's basically proof of stake for the most part, which means there's enough nodes that transactions can pass through and there's overall security within the system. Yield farming, on the other hand, is a little bit different. Yield farming is more towards generating a return on a liquidity you're providing. So, generally, from a staking perspective, your return is maybe 5%, 6%, 7%, so on and so forth. On a yield farming perspective, it could go up triple digits, sort of thing. But yield farming is something that, for example, you can do in Uniswap or a few other DEXs, where you can lock up your stables, your tokens such as Ethereum, Cardano, whatever, and they reward you with their native tokens. Projects kind of say, here's part of our native token for providing this liquidity that's sitting there, and that becomes your yield. Or they could just kind of give you back in the token you've provided. So some yield farming projects where you provide, let's just say USDC, USDT liquidity, they will also take the fees from the trading side and pay you back in USDT, USDC. So yield farming, again, is like more of a, it's a return on the liquidity you're providing, versus staking is more, you're ensuring integrity of the network by providing your tokens within a node.
And Yves, what are your thoughts on that?
For us, we again have to, maybe one important part is we're a custodial staking provider. So we have the funds under control. That qualifies us basically as a financial institution, not as a pure technology provider. So we have a little bit of a different regulatory setup we're in. And therefore, we only stake to our own infrastructure at the moment. So no community pools, etc. We run our own pools. And as of now, we also only focus on POS, or proof of stake, on the blockchain level, and are currently investigating how we can offer our clients access to yield farming and other DeFi earning opportunities in a compliant manner.
And what would be the requirements to, I suppose, get into yield farming on your platform?
I think there's basically oftentimes the discussion around knowing who is your counterparty and who you're interacting with, and there's some regulatory uncertainty to what extent, when you provide liquidity, you're actually like supporting the third-party trade of somebody who's actually then exchanging a token on that DEX, for example. To what extent now we should or must have KYC that counterparty, or to what extent we're actually just providing a service that's independent of the actual trade on this automated market maker like Uniswap. And so we're trying to get some more clarity on that. At the same time, we're looking into the KYC offerings on the market, which again have some drawbacks. One of them being they have a smaller liquidity, so usually there's less yield that you can achieve. But we're looking into all of them, and we hope that in early next year we can offer something for clients.
And what is your current KYC process?
On our side, it's actually quite a high effort, because we have to do a normal onboarding like a bank. So we do basically all the document side topics. So first of all, usually we have an identification. In Switzerland, you have to do video identification. That's also a little bit different from some other countries. So we have outsourced that to a service provider. But then we do a lot of like document validation. If somebody wants to send us crypto, we have to know all the addresses. We have external providers like Elliptic who help us with the history of that address, the history of all the transactions. If something gets flagged, and that's easily the case, then we have to manually investigate. So depending on who the client is, who onboards with us, that can create quite some effort. And then in addition, we are also required, maybe that's an interesting part, what we're now talking about with MiCA, etc. Switzerland knows similar rules already since 2019. So for a few years already, we have had to prove power of authority over an address of a client. So if you want to send funds or register an address with us, you basically have to prove that you have control over the address by signing a message or sending a microtransaction. And all of that naturally is quite an effort.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing, Yves and Danish. So on the subject of staking as a service, Philip, what are your thoughts on staking as a service, and how do you believe it's going to shape the future of staking?
Funny enough, the history of staking as a service, it's evolved quite a bit. I remember back in the day, to start up a stake pool, it was all about gathering as much ADA as you can, trying to have a high pledge. If you had a big presence brand-wise, you either have YouTube videos, YouTube channels to spread your awareness. You're very active on Twitter, or had podcasts. Unfortunately, some of my favorite podcasts aren't around, but I digress. But it was just a couple of factors to pretty much bring awareness of your stake pool. Now it's evolved. Now we're starting to see more concepts of utilizing the staking mechanism like ISPOs, and that's when we had DeFi Summer for Cardano, at least. Projects could work in partnership with stake pool operators, and they could use a staking mechanism to fund their projects. It was a very exciting time, and I think that was just the first initiative of using that staking mechanism. And moving forward, with the recent announcement of Midnight, the fact that now we can bring up side chains and utilize stake pool operators, and we pretty much have 3,000 stake pools. Let's consider that, assume that's around 3,000 operators. We have access to around 3,000 DevOps engineers for Cardano. And for anyone in IT, devs don't like doing DevOps. So the fact that we have that many DevOps engineers at our disposal, and we can work in partnership with them and start up projects and building up new technologies, whether it's either a new dApp, a new sidechain, and we're in a bear market, so we're going to be seeing new tech coming out, new aspects of using the staking mechanism to fund. That's, I think, where the exciting part, where the future of staking is going to be headed to. So it's going to be exciting what we can build, especially here in the bear market.
Thank you very much for sharing, Philip.
Maybe just to add on that, I also see this consolidation and growth of several large players that now go into that field. So you used to have all those community operators in the past, and now you have, you're one example, there's many, many more that become quite important in the industry. They have a broad offering, whereas many community operators usually focused on one protocol. The larger players now try to be very broad, and then offer their services also to professional clients, business to business wise, like us, for example. And there I see a different set of requirements as well, because the moment you talk to business or institutional clients, there's questions about integration, there's questions about business processes, there's questions about accounting topics, etc., that usually as a stake pool operator for the community you don't have to care about, because it all happens on chain. Whoever delegates to you gets a cut, and the rest is directly available for him. And when you go B2B, you have a lot of this enterprise topics that you have to deal with as well. Yeah, and not everybody can do that, basically, then.
Yeah, I can attest to that, especially now that I work at full-time in a crypto industry, and now I have to well, one of the requirements when I joined was I wanted to see exposure into Ethereum and other protocols, and trying to see the benefits, the strengths of those protocols, if there's any way that Cardano could reutilize that, and working together, how can we benefit each other's ecosystems? But as I'm more broad, I can't go very deep, and that's where a lot of these community stake pools and developers, that's where working with them is highly important, and they've built great tools for the ecosystem. But moving forward, it's going to be very important now at a macro level. Things are going to be tough. we have our crypto winner. It's going to be important to make these partnerships where people who have their strengths, they identify that, but we make partnerships with people where it's appropriate, and we can build out this ecosystem in the best way that we can. So looking forward to that, looking forward to the partnerships, and thanks for the Cardano Foundation for bringing us together and finally building these kind of relationships and prepare ourselves for the next years to come.
Yeah. Thank you very much for sharing, guys. So on the topic of interoperability, right, just thought I'd throw this in. So we recently introduced the crypto primitive SCCP256K1, and that basically creates interoperability between chains. Do you believe this change would have an effect on exchanges?
Yes and no, for the most part. I think when we look at a centralized exchange, we kind of have a interoperable central core in the sense where we connect to, I don't know, I think we're like 30 plus blockchains, but when the assets are within our core trading engine, they're basically interoperable. You can trade your Solana, you can trade your DOT against Bitcoin or against Tether, USDC sort of thing. So in its core, once we integrate a blockchain, we operate as a bridge, which kind of enables interoperability. So you can deposit USDC on Tether, USDC on Ethereum, and then you can take it out on Solana, for example, right? So that's like interoperability in that sense. So to us, external interoperability from a centralized exchange perspective isn't as significant because we create the interoperability ourselves within the exchange. But we work with DEXs, and we work with, we've got a DeFi team that's building DEXs and all this sort of stuff. So to them, it makes a huge difference, right? So when you can say, I can grab liquidity from Ethereum and post it on Cardano, for example, and exchange assets without trying to create a different bridge or do anything. So if it's like truly interoperable, then that's really strong for the DeFi industry for the most part, because I think it allows dApps to kind of harness the liquidity and users and assets off other chains as well. So that kind of makes it a really good proposition, because that's how the world becomes less fragmented, because right now everything is so, there's Cardano, and then there's Ethereum, and then there's 5 different chains where people are segregated within. But I think that true interoperability that happens in the DeFi space will really bring it all together and kind of make it a cohesive area sort of thing.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for your response there, Danish. Do you guys have anything to add on that?
Yeah, maybe just, you're not talking mainly about like the transfer of the value, but then if you look at the aspect of composability, this tendency of having many more layer 1 protocols, but then adding layer 2s on top, etc. This not only fragments the liquidity, but also is like a roadblock to the whole composability. If you want to build a DeFi protocol that uses other DeFi protocols like Lego blocks, but some of them are sitting on a different protocol. If you don't have a smart way to interact with them, you cannot compose on them. And so I really think that it's an enabler for the whole growth. As a
100%. I think like right now the barrier really is, as you said, it's like, you've got Ethereum and you've got 5 different layer 2s, so like Arbitrum, Immutable X, and those sort of things. Like crossing assets over takes like 7 days, bringing it back takes 7 days, and that sort of thing. So yeah, when interoperability comes, you will kind of have that homogeneous area where you can operate, sort of thing. So it'll be exciting when that comes forward, I suppose.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the regulation aspect, because we only touched on the American regulations. So in Europe, the European lawmakers have drafted a few bills in the past to, I suppose, circumvent issues that we're having with cryptocurrency assets. And it hasn't really worked so far, right? So with the introduction of MiCA, which is the market and crypto assets regulation, that basically looks after or has rules against stable coins, NFT marketplaces, and DeFi protocols. Do you think MiCA would, I suppose, circumvent all the issues we're currently having in the market? Or how do you think this new bill would, I suppose, improve the current situation?
Do you want to go first and then I can go?
Yeah, all right. Yeah. So if I remember correctly, MiCA has like 3 main areas, 2 being about listing your tokens, whether they're stablecoin type as one regime, another one the non-stablecoin type tokens that could be utility tokens, etc. How to get them listed and what you have to fulfill regarding requirements for white paper, requirements for when you have to deliver, etc., etc. So those aspects, I think, don't help with cases that we had in the recent weeks and the like. But the third regime is something like an application of MiFID to virtual asset service providers. And there are some requirements that could potentially help with that, where you set some quality standards and some reporting, auditing standards, etc. But it hasn't come through yet. Now you have like the pretty much final draft. It has been through the tri-party discussions now, and they postponed the actual release to, I think, February. And so we'll see whether there will be any more additions, because there's still a few uncertainties around that. And as you just mentioned, NFTs is one example where there's a definition that says if an NFT, which is something that's not fungible and unique, without giving a definition what non-fungible and unique means in the legal context, but if you fractionalize them, so I, for example, once bought, a Swiss bank once offered last year an offering or a service where you could buy a fraction of a Picasso. So I just own like 0.1% of a Picasso now. That's a fractionalized NFT, and there's no clarity on that, whether that still is an NFT and out of scope of MiCA, whether that's now a financial asset that's in scope. There has been some statements of a commissioner last summer that they're most probably not NFTs anymore if they're fractionalized and fungible as such. But even worse, in my opinion, is that if an NFT is part of a larger collection, we all know the Bored Apes and the CryptoPunks, etc., but I mean, there's so many collections out there, then they may not be considered NFTs anymore and fall under the regulation. So there's still a lot of uncertainty in those areas. But I think the most clarity will be around listing a project on an exchange. And that's where it will mainly help, and the rest needs some more clarification.
Okay. And also, you know, the lawmakers need to be educated on what the differences are and how to go about creating laws against this.
I think MiCA itself doesn't really prevent what we're seeing in the market right now, which is more of a downfall of a large centralized exchange because they misappropriated user funds. And then because of over leverage, and nothing to back that leverage, we are seeing a contagion effect that's reflecting on BlockFi, a few other exchanges, etc. MiCA doesn't exactly address any of those issues, so it's more towards asset listings, KYC, AML, that sort of thing, which us as an exchange and Bitrue as well, as you mentioned, is we already follow those rules. Like we, do stringent KYC, AML. We make sure the projects are legit, whatever assets we're listing, et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of reinforcing current practices. And yes, there are players that don't follow those practices. So this will kind of make it a little bit more hard and fast rule when it does come in effect. But as such, I think there is no current regulatory framework, be it Europe or US, that prevents what happened last week or the week before from happening again, sort of thing. And I think that's where we can't just, as I said, you can't just paint it with a TradFi brush. Regulators need to be educated, being like, this is how our industry operates, this is how assets move, So you need to create something that's a little bit more customized to the industry, to the players within the industry, rather than saying, hey, you need to follow MiFID rules or whatever sort of thing.
Yeah, speaking of, I suppose, the issue that happened last week, right, and the number of issues that have happened in the industry over the course of a few years, I suppose a lot of people have, or are kind of losing hope in the blockchain space and how everything is secure and how things work, et cetera, et cetera. How do you believe we could, I suppose, rebuild that trust with users? There's a notion of the proof of reserve that CZ was talking about. Do you think that would help with, I suppose, resurrecting the confidence that people have in the blockchain space?
Yeah, I think the number one thing, and obviously being in industry for the past 10 years, I know where there's lack of transparency and why there's lack of transparency, because not everybody's a good actor in the space, right? So the less transparent, the worse they are, sort of thing. So I think bringing about that level of transparency, especially from a centralized player, where we are showing proof of reserves, we fairly transparent with what assets go in and go out, here are wallets, etc. I think that does give a person a level of security. Obviously, it's going to take some time to bring confidence back, but I think it needs to be. The mindset now needs to be less of, last year was a gold rush. It was everybody's like, oh yeah, you'll put $100 and tomorrow it's like $1,000, like everywhere. Last year sort of thing. But I think now it'll taper off. I mean, it already has tapered off a little bit. So I think the mindset will need to change from I want to make a quick buck to I'm in this for the long term. Both from a blockchain development perspective and from an asset trading perspective sort of thing. So I think that short-term mentality will need to take a backseat going forward. And yeah, the more transparency, especially from projects building, like what do they do with their treasuries, where do they go? Like, last year, excuse me, last year, half the NFT founders raised money and then disappeared, right? Like, where did they go? Who were they? Who's giving them money? What happened to treasuries? All that sort of stuff. So that also erodes on a person's confidence. So more transparency, more accountability, I think, will bring back confidence over the long term, I believe.
Thank you very much, Danish. Emma, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do like, what the CEO for Cardano Foundation, Mr. Gray Guard, right?
Yeah,
he said it's the time to build trust. And in Chinese, we have the crisis has two meanings. One is danger. The other one is opportunity. I think it's the timing for exchanges and every aspect of the crypto space to reflect, right, what we have done and what we are going in the future. And I think it's the time to do not only just on Twitter to announce we do the ROS, POR, right, and to announce like we have done. But most important is walk the talk. Yeah, so, every perspectives, we can just work together and to take this as a crisis, as an opportunity, and move forward.
Great stuff. Thank you very much for sharing that information, Emma. So my last question would be around the metaverse. So have you looked into, or are you looking into supporting metaverse projects in the future? Like, I suppose maybe venture funds or any accelerator programs you're looking to invest in? Danish?
Yeah, so we've got a venture side, we've got an incubator accelerator where we invest in projects and give them the necessary support to go from idea to launch, so on and so forth, including community. I think the metaverse, it's yet to prove itself. Everybody is like, yeah, we've got a branch in the metaverse, and we've got an embassy in the metaverse, we've got this metaverse, that metaverse. I mean, the UI, UX is not there yet. You can barely operate it. You try it on your mobile phone, you can barely try it on a mobile phone. I'm still a little bit skeptical, mainly from my experience when I have my Oculus, like it's 10 minutes and I'm kind of done with this. Like, this is not what I want to do. We have invested in some metaverse projects, which we think will scale. One of our early investments was Sandbox. But again, it's yet to prove itself, because I think everybody thinks of metaverse as one giant space, right? But a metaverse could be like, I could spin up a metaverse on my computer, right? Like an unending space sort of thing. So again, it's so fragmented. There will be, unless there's a bridge created across all metaverses, or like one underlying layer that I can take an asset from one metaverse, from Facebook's metaverse, for example, to like Sandbox, to whatever, and that asset travels with me, then it's worth it. But right now, every other project, every other company has a different metaverse over here, over there, over there. So I think until that fragmentation is solved and you have like one cohesive layer, as with interoperability, one cohesive layer across every platform, every chain. You don't need to go through like different browsers to access something, or different domains. That's when it kind of comes to fruition. But right now, it's just a little fragmented and you know, segregated sort of thing.
So there you go, guys. If you have any metaverse projects that you're looking to get funded, you have the guy to talk to. So do you have any final points you want to discuss?
Yeah, just especially with recent events, for those that are new to crypto and still a little bit scared, there's actually one ad. I don't like to recommend ads, but I got to give kudos to them. Coinbase released, especially in the times when we're getting spammed of the trust us right now, I think Coinbase did a good job of messaging, bringing it back where you shouldn't have to trust us. You shouldn't trust us, but you shouldn't have to. That kind of brings back to the whole, let's simplify crypto into trust but verify. I think moving forward, you know, if we just remind ourselves that that's where we can start with crypto and how we can move forward.
Awesome, thank you very
Fully
much.
agree with that. The don't trust but verify should be possible, shouldn't be necessary. So, but if you doubt, or if you're talking about big amounts or have a regulatory reason to do so, you should be able to have this transparency. I think we're all working in that direction.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think verify yourself is a tenet of our industry, because if we don't kind of self-regulate ourselves or manage ourselves, we're no more better than the TradFi world. So I think we kind of do, taking up from events of last week, yes, it's a little bit disheartening, but I think it's a learning process. Bad things happen all the time. I think you just got to suck it up and roll with it, sort of thing. But yeah, I think we still need to evolve, and self-regulation, self-verification is key, and I think that's something that people should take forward, because we shouldn't be calling for external regulators to come in, because then we're just like the finance industry. So that's kind of what we need to be mindful of.
Yeah, as a crypto exchange, I think we already have the insurance fund 3 years ago to protect our users assets, and I think in the future we will just further explore all the ways we can to protect the asset and to make the exchange is a secure place for users, and make it's a it's a good circle for the whole space, industry space. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you very much for sharing the information. I guess that's it from me. Thank you very much to the panelists and to everyone listening. And yeah, that's it from us.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thanks, guys.